Hello. So in this video, we're going to continue on with our Deneb journey, and we're going to go a little bit deeper today. We're going to go from creating a basic visualization, be it a line or a bar chart, and we're going to add elements that make them more usable. So what am I talking about? Well, here we have a line chart, and our intention today is to end up creating something that looks a bit like this. And it's going to be a line bar chart, and we're going to be using layers. Layers are a really important element of vega-lite in Deneb because it allows us to stack elements on top of each other. So each visual element that you see in this visualization is a layer. The bar is a layer, the line is a layer, and also the data labels is another layer. So that's 3 layers combined to create a nice looking visualization. Like, we're going to take it one step further in this video and create something that's a bit nicer than this, a bit more interesting, and something that you can't actually create in Power BI. So let's go. Back to our basic line chart. Now, if you don't know what you're looking at, no worries, just check out one of my previous videos on Deneb where it explains what these things are. But very brief overview again, we have our data set. We have a mark, which is a line, and the rest is the encoding. So it says the x-axis is the round and the y-axis is the total points per game week. Now we're going to take these elements, we're going to change some of them, we're going to add to them and create something that looks pretty cool. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to change our mark line. The mark itself is going to stay a line, but we're going to add a couple of things to it to make it more interesting. It's a small change, but it has a big impact. So instead of saying mark line, I'm going to say mark. I'm going to open up a curly bracket. I enjoy saying curly bracket. And I'm going to say mark, and then I'm going to say type. And my mark type is a line. Now, I've made a mistake for sure. Mark type line. And then I need to, of course, add a comma. So I've made that change, but that change has no impact because all that's done is allow me to add more elements. Mark type line is going to allow me to add more things. We'll do that now. So I want to say my type is a line, but within that line, I also want to have a point. And I'm going to add no specifications to that point at the moment. And it's going to show you what it does. My line now has a point. It's nice, it's helpful. It shows you where every point of the x-axis actually is. Looks a bit better. Looks a little bit more interesting. But we're still very far from where we want to go. I'm going to zoom in a little bit now to show you what this next part does. So here, I'm going to say my point, and I'm going to add some specifications to it. I'm going to say that I want my point to not be filled. Yeah. So how does that look? I'm just going to go here and I'm going to type filled and I'm going to say false because I don't want it to be filled. When I do that, you can see, this is why I zoomed in. You can see now our points are hollow. They have no fill. If I want to, I can also say, just to really emphasize that point, I can, within my line, I can add another bit of a specification, and I say I want the stroke width to be, I don't know, 2. So my line is a lot thinner, and I have these empty points. My points are empty, but I can say they are filled is false, so I now can specify and say I would like to fill them with a certain color, and I'm going to pick orange because it stands out nicely and it matches my jumper. Great. There you go. I have filled orange points on my x-axis. Yeah, each point for each of the x-axis. I like how it looks, to be honest. I think it's certainly visually more interesting. Again, this is just a very, very start. This is not, we haven't touched the layers yet. Yeah, that's just to add a visual element to show how you do that, because I think it looks quite nice. What I want to do now is to start working with layers. And at the very first, just to show you what a layer is, we're going to do this. So this is how you create a layer. You say layer, and then you're going to do a square bracket and a curly bracket. So I'm going to go layer, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do my square bracket, then my curly bracket. They will automatically close themselves off. So we'll just take this, we'll copy them. And to show you what a layer is, I can now just paste these, which is the closed off square and curly bracket corresponding to line 4 here. Implement that change, and you can see that nothing's changed, but I do have a layer. And the layer is this. We've already created this layer. So what we already created was our first layer. To add more elements, we just have to do the same thing again, but in a different way to add more stuff. So my first mark was my line, which had the point. To add another mark, I just need to specify a new layer. And that's easy to do, because within this square bracket and this curly bracket, I can then just start to specify my layers. So now, for example, leave my square bracket open and take this curly bracket and do a comma, because that is the end of my first layer. And I'll start on my second layer now. Open it up. I can then specify. So what I want to do now is I want to start to add my data labels. My data labels are going to be the second layer in this visualization. We're going to start off in exactly the same way. And to show you how exactly the same it is, I can just copy and paste from here. So in my second layer, I'm saying mark type as we did the first time. But instead of line, I'm going to say text, because this is what it is. We're doing data labels, and of course data labels are text. So that is essentially a layer. As you can see, I've created the layer and it's closed off just like we did here. You're seeing nothing added because I've closed it off and I've implemented the change, but I need to specify when my mark is text what I want the text to be. And that's what I'm going to do now. I can then use my encoding and I can say, open another curly bracket, and I'm going to go text, and the field that I want to use, of course, I need to specify, and the field is called total points per game week. Of course, the same value that I've used for the line. Yeah? Now, if I zoom in here again, just to show you what's going to happen, I have my data labels. This worked, it's done. Fantastic, kind of. As I said, a layer is just literally a layer. My text is sitting exactly on top of the point of the previous mark. Why? Because it's just the same data visualized with text. So at this point, the text is pretty useless because you can't read it. But we can now specify precisely where we want that text. And we have a couple of things. One is called dy, and another is called dx. Now, maybe you can see what I'm going to do now. dy is going to specify where my text is going to sit on the y-axis, and dx specifies where my text is going to sit on the x-axis. So let's have a look. If I say dy, say instead of 0.15, you'll see that my text is going to move down. My text is now sitting below my value. So if I say my text dy is -15, it's going to go above the value, which is what I prefer. So I'm going to leave it that way. My dx, should you ever want to use this, we're not going to use it, but just to show you, If I say dx10, it shifts my data to the right. If I say dx minus 10, it shifts it to the left. That's how that works. If I enter 0, it sits, of course, exactly where it should be on the x-axis. We're not going to use it, so I'm just going to delete it. But that is how you do it, should you ever need that. So that's it. Just zoom back out again so you can see the entire visualization. We now have a line with a point, and we also have data labels. Fantastic. We're really getting somewhere now because we've seen what you can achieve with a layer. Again, each mark and its encoding is a layer. So this first section is a layer. This second section is a layer. We now want to create a third layer. Now, actually what's pretty cool is it's so easy to copy and paste these elements and change them. So for example, what am I going to do now? We want a bar line chart. Okay, we have a line, but I can easily change my line to a bar if I want. I mean, as you've seen in previous Deneb vega-lite videos, or maybe you already know, if I say, okay, I don't want a line, I want a bar, just add this down here. My line just becomes the bar. Fantastic. Love it. So I can just copy this. I can cheat and copy my own code. And I'm gonna, where this layer ends, add a brand new layer, which is just my own copied layer. Implement that change and see what happens. Oh, gotta change it to line, of course. And now we see our line is back. This previously was line, as you saw. So now if that's line again, it's going to look identical because the lines are sitting on top of one another. So change this to bar. And because I've changed it to bar, we don't need any of these elements anymore. We don't need any of this point, stroke width filled, so I can just get rid of all of this and just leave it at that. And we have a bar. Our first mark is now really, really simple. It's just bar. Second mark is our data label. And our third mark is the first one actually that we created. And it's our line. Cool. Right? We now have essentially what I showed you the first time. We're not finished, but we are there. Almost. It makes no sense, of course, to have a line and a bar display the same value. So now we need to look at how do we handle things when we're essentially using two different values on the y-axis. And this is what we're going to do. Because my mark line, I'm going to change that. And I'm going to change the value from my total points by game week to my bonus points. How's that going to look? Well, so what I need to do now is I need to specify which field I want to use for my y-axis on this particular mark, which is the line. Because again, we don't want to use the same value, we want to use a different value. And just as I've done here, for the mark and text, I need to add the same information here in my mark for my line. So what I need to do is add my encoding. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say encoding. I'm going to do my curly bracket, and I want to say that I want the y-axis to be a field and the field that I want to use is going to be bonus. I really can't type. Exactly. And when I put that change in, you'll see that my y-axis drops to the very bottom because the values in bonus are a small part of the values that already exist in total points per game week. So essentially the values are a lot lower. So we now have to look at how we want to display this. One of the ways of doing that is saying that we can separate the y-axis. So essentially the y-axis scale for total points and the y-axis for the bonus to be different. How do we do that? All we're going to do is when here our layer is closed off, we can add a little bit of line which says essentially that treat the two y-axes as independent. Do this, and this is going to say resolve the scale of the y is independent. So resolve the scale of the y independent, and we put that in directly after we close the layer. And when I do that, you'll see that my bonus values go again back up to the top of the visualization. We have some issues now, okay? So you'll see that the y-axis here is really messy. Why is that? That's because we've done something. We've specified at the very bottom that the y-axis is total points per game week. For my mark line, I've specified that my y-axis is bonus. But for the mark text, it's still showing me a y-axis value, which is why we have now on the right hand side, we have essentially two different y-axes shown. So now what I need to do is go into my mark text and say, actually, I don't want to see a y-axis at all for this one. No y-axis. So it's very similar to what we've just done in the encoding y field. We're going to do the same thing actually. And we're just going to say, I don't want to see the y-axis. So here, mark text, we have the encoding, we have the total points per game week within the mark text. But what I want to do now is say that after the text to specify that the y field is total points per game week, but the axis should be null. And when we do that, you can see now that's resolved this issue. Now we have the values only for the bonus points, 20, 40, 60 on the right side, whereas on the left hand side we have 200, 400, 800, 600, 800. So we've separated our axes. That's how you do that if you want to do that, if you need to do it. I would suggest actually that's not a particularly appropriate way to show the data in this visualization. And what I want to do is something far cooler that certainly the way I'm going to display it, pretty sure you can't do it in Power BI, or if you can, it's an annoying workaround. So what I'm going to do is actually undo what I just did. I'm now going to remove my resolve the y-axis independent. I don't want that. That is how you do it if you ever need it, and you will need that at some point. But for my case here, I've decided that I don't need it. So I'm removing this. What I now also need to do is remove the encoding of my mark here. So I'm going to get rid of this as well. Hopefully that'll work. It did work. So now we're back to where we were before. The y-axis is not independent, and in my mark text, I haven't said don't show me an axis on my text. Exactly how it was before. And the change I'm going to make now is really minor. I'm going to do a couple of things. First of all, I want to now display more text values for my bonus points. I want those to also have data labels. So we can do that in a really nice straightforward way. We can again copy what we've already done. Here we have our mark text, blah, blah, blah. Copying it. Copying my own code. Do this, gonna copy it. And just for the sake of understanding where stuff goes and doing stuff bit by bit, I'm gonna put it at the very bottom here. I could actually put it directly next to this mark as well, the two texts together, but I want to like layer them in a certain way so it's easier for me to understand the journey that I've gotten through to get through this final version of the visualization. So my mark is type text. My dy is minus 15. Great. My field is now no longer total points by game week, but I'm using bonus. And again, I'm going to specify my y-axis y, because if I didn't, it would be the same as my total points per game week. So basically it would be all the way up here. I want to ensure that my mark type text and my mark line have the same y-axis. So I can just take this, I'm going to copy it. Now I've set field bonus, so my field is bonus, that's correct. But I also want my y-axis to be bonus too. Make sure I close off this curly bracket here. And get rid of that. Made a mistake for sure. Good. So now I've said that my field is bonus and the y-axis is also bonus. So let's see what happens. Well, okay, it worked, but what I need to do is, of course, change the color here because it's this black text which can't be seen. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to add a line here and I'm going to, let's just paste that in. So the color value of my text in the encoding is now going to be white. And now we can see that we have white text. So that's cool. Almost there. I'm going to make one final change, which I think makes all the difference. Or maybe two changes. But first of all, I'm going to change the line color again from blue to orange. So here, my line here, I don't want it to be blue. I want to specify the color. So let's do that. I want the stroke to be a specific color. I want to stick with orange. Why not? Loving a bit of orange today. So now I have an orange line with the orange point. Now this is the last change, I promise. But I think this looks cool. Instead of saying line, I'm going to say I want this to be a rule. When I do that, you get one of those. I think that looks great, to be honest. I like that a lot. You can't really do that in Power BI. And it really adds an extra element to this visualization. It fits in with how I want to display the data. It fits in with what those two data values mean, that the round, that the bonus, is part of the total points. Looks cool. So that's what I want to do. I know that this was a lot. Using layers is a really important part of using vega-lite and Deneb. But once you get your head around it, once you understand what you can do with those layers, hopefully, as I've displayed in this video, you can do a lot. You can really change the visual elements to create, for me, what the actual point of Deneb is, and to create very bespoke visualizations. I really enjoyed making this video. I hope it helped. Leave some comments in the comment section if you enjoyed it, if you have any ideas of what you could do with this or what you want to do with this. Really think it's worth looking into because you can create some great stuff. If you liked the video, give it a like. Click that subscribe button so you see more videos like this coming. And enjoy Power BI. Enjoy Deneb. Take care. Goodbye.